Welcome. Today, Thrive While Loving an Addict. I'm Kale Wells, and I am joined by Dawn Jackson today. And I'm very excited to have her on. She has her own story to tell with different family members and a friend. And she works in the space of grief and recovery as a specialist. So I always want to hear from people like this because they're in the trenches. They're doing this day in, day out. They have a window in as somebody who has loved somebody, as well as supporting others that are in the throes of this disease. So welcome, Dawn.
Thank you, Kale. I'm happy to be here today.
Great. Super. So I always kind of ask my guests to start out with like, what's their origin story? And yours has to do with your dad, your stepdad, and just give us a window into what you grew up with.
Yeah, sure. So, my biological dad was an alcoholic. And so we had a very kind of on again, off again relationship because my parents divorced at the age of 3.
Mm,
And for a long time, we didn't live in the same state. So I would see my dad about once a year. And one thing I always remember is when I would go visit my dad, he would
hmm
leave me and he would go out drinking at the bars. And I couldn't understand that. I couldn't understand why it was so important to do that versus being with me when he could only see me once a year.
Right.
So that kind of continued throughout my life, his drinking, and it came with many ups and downs and periods of time where we were really distant from each other and didn't talk, sadly,
hmm
for months.
hmm
But in the midst of that, my mom had remarried, and my stepdad was also an alcoholic.
mm
So they were together throughout my teenage years. And so I developed that part of me that knew like it wasn't always safe at home, right? And
hmm
I didn't want to
hmm
bring my friends home, and I was always waiting for the next shoe to drop because I
Right.
didn't know how he was going to come home. He was a very loving, kind man, but he still
hmm
was an alcoholic. And
hmm
so those two things kind of shaped my childhood and who I became.
hmm And did his personality change when he drank?
Oh, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
Okay. All right.
That kind, loving man became belligerent, difficult to get along with. And
hmm
my dad was the same way at times. And so
hmm
that was very uncomfortable for me. I felt like there was constant tension that I was trying to navigate at home
Right.
and
Right.
just hoping that today would be a day that he wouldn't be drinking.
Sure. Yeah. And so did you kind of grow up, because we can do this in all different ways in terms of what our coping mechanisms are as kids growing up with this. What were the coping mechanisms that you grabbed a hold of that worked for you in terms of figuring out how to survive this chaos?
I pretty much was the good girl. I mean,
Mm,
I didn't have any siblings. I was an only child, but I just tried to walk the straight line, just stay small, not create any waves because I didn't want things to be any worse than they were, right? It
hmm
was just
hmm
uncomfortable. And so I didn't want any more discomfort, but I felt like I was living in constant chaos.
Right.
And if it wasn't the chaos around me, it was the chaos in my head about what was going to happen next.
Right. 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 And so did you have the experience that of that kind of chaotic energy being feeling it in your body?
Oh, yeah, definitely. And it's interesting because it took me so many years to realize that chaos was
hmm
my comfort zone
hmm hmm
until
hmm
I did a lot of healing work. And then I was like, it's super uncomfortable for me to be around chaos anymore
hmm
because that's what I lived for all of my childhood and my early adult life because that
Yeah.
was normal. And if it wasn't chaotic, it was like,
hmm
uh-oh, this is uncomfortable.
Yeah, I talk a lot about patterns of how we do our life, and they're always born out of our childhood. And then at some point, I mean, I remember thinking personally, am I just going to keep repeating this chaos?
Hmm.
Because it's uncomfortable when it's not chaotic.
Right. Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And I I found myself as a teenager in a relationship, and I think it's because um, Like I wanted some attention, and I'm not saying I didn't get any at home, but I wanted a reprieve from the stress
Mm-hmm.
at home. And so I
Mm-hmm.
ended up in this relationship that was abusive. And
Mm-hmm.
so it continued that chaos cycle. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't know anything different at that point.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Do you remember when you kind of began to kind of wake up and ask yourself the question of, am I just going to keep repeating this?
Well, at the age of 30, my husband asked for a divorce.
Okay.
And at first, it was, I'm the victim. How can you be doing this? How can you be leaving me and our 3.5-year-old son?
Mm-hmm.
And then I finally took a good hard look and realized I had a lot of stuff that I brought into this marriage. I didn't know how to navigate a healthy relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And I realized that I had been living in chaos. I brought it into the marriage.
Mm-hmm.
And that was when I first started looking at how I wanted to live moving forward and stepping
Mm-hmm.
out of that chaos because it was so uncomfortable and it wasn't creating the type of life that I desired.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. And so I think for a lot of us, there comes that point where we realize that the pattern that we've been running in terms of creating chaos, even when it's not there because it's uncomfortable, so we have to create it, we kind of wake up and go, okay, well, this isn't working for me.
Right.
And then there's the bridge too, like, okay, well, I don't even know what like healthy looks like.
hmm Yeah, I can totally relate to that. And so after my divorce, I started a lot of like personal growth work, and
Mm-hmm.
it was helpful.
Mm-hmm.
But I still found like there was something that was missing. And
Mm-hmm.
it wasn't until about 11 years ago when I stepped into a certification training to become a grief recovery method specialist. That was the
Hmm.
missing piece because I
Okay.
hadn't realized how much grief I'd been carrying my whole life. I didn't label it as grief. For me,
Right.
grief had always been, well, if somebody dies, but I hadn't experienced much death in my life. And
Yeah.
when I was in the class, I realized that growing up with addicted fathers was a
Mm-hmm.
grieving experience, being in an abusive relationship, grieving experience, a divorce. So
Mm-hmm.
it all came tumbling down
Mm-hmm.
like, oh my gosh, this is the reason that I feel the way I feel is because I didn't have any tools to process all of this.
Right, right. And so how did you label it if until that point?
That's a really interesting question. I think I just labeled it as, yeah, I've experienced some really hard things in my life, but I didn't have any other context. It wasn't grief. These were just horrible things that I went through. I didn't
Mm-hmm.
realize the impact they'd had on every aspect of my life and all my
Mm-hmm.
relationships, that I'd been
Mm-hmm.
carrying all this pain and hadn't
Mm-hmm.
known how to process it.
Yeah.
So it was making it difficult for me to have any healthy relationships in my life.
I'm just really curious, Dawn. Did you find yourself like kind of setting an intention of it's important for me to want to learn how to do my life different?
Yeah, definitely. Because I tell this to a lot of people for many years of my life, I thought something was wrong because I didn't feel happy. And yet,
Mm-hmm.
we've talked about all the hard things in my life, but like I had a nice house, I had a great son, I had a good job as a nurse. So I had so many great things, but I didn't
Mm-hmm.
feel happy. And I was like, why
Mm-hmm.
can't I feel happy? Like I just didn't know.
Mm-hmm.
And but I knew that I was always waiting for something to happen that
Yeah.
wasn't good. And
Right.
so obviously that was taking precedence in my mind, right?
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't until I really started healing all the grief that had been stuck in my heart for years that I could
Mm-hmm.
experience joy again.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
I think for many years I was just surviving, trying to get through, but not really embracing the joy and happiness in my life that I could.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And so do you have a sense about like how long that took you to do the kind of excavation of this grief that was in your heart?
Yeah, I would say it was probably because I went through different phases of
Mm,
personal growth work. I went to workshops. I would say it was over 10 years, and that's because it took me a while to find the last tool that
mm,
has been the most helpful, which was the grief recovery method.
yeah. Yeah. And so where did you get that persistence from?
I think I've always just wanted more, meaning
Hmm.
I wanted joy. I
Hmm.
wanted a really healthy relationship, all types of relationships, not just a romantic one, but my
Hmm.
friendships, the relationship with my parents. I wanted those to be healthy, but I think that that really pushed me. And just knowing that I could have better for my life.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, I think of it as a courageous journey
Mhm.
that not everybody takes.
I agree.
Hmm. And so my hat's off to you for taking the journey. And because I'm sure there's somebody listening to this, it's like 10 years. Are you kidding me? And I tried this and I tried this and I tried this. And finally, I found that formula or that key
Right.
that kind of unlocked what you'd been carrying around for so long. And then you going through the journey of kind of reconfiguring yourself.
Mhm.
Could you
Yeah,
speak to that a little bit?
yeah, that's interesting. When you do start healing and you come out on the other side, like we are different people. There's parts of us that remain, but like I started having more boundaries. And
Mm-hmm.
there were certain relationships that I realized didn't honor me
Mm-hmm.
and were keeping me in that space of feeling like a victim and
Mm-hmm.
the chaos. And so I really had to put some distance between me and some of those relationships to
Mm-hmm.
move forward. So that was something that changed quite a bit.
Mm-hmm.
And I've noticed through my journey, even before the grief recovery method, just when I was doing personal growth work, is that when we change,
Mm-hmm.
when we grow,
Mm-hmm.
that's uncomfortable for many people that are used to us being
Mm-hmm.
a certain way.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And in order for them to feel comfortable, they need to start growing as well because we're a
Mm-hmm.
reflection to them of where
Mm-hmm.
maybe they're not stepping into their highest self.
Mm-hmm.
And so, yeah, it was interesting because there were people that kind of fell by the wayside and new people that walked in. And
Mm-hmm.
as hard as that was, because for me, change has always been difficult, I also
Mm-hmm.
saw the value in creating those healthy relationships that did and do support me in my life.
Right. Yeah. And so that's really great. I think for so many people that are listening to this is what were some of the first boundaries that you began to draw? And it's a skill set to perfect. It's not like you
Mhm.
figure out, I need to draw some boundaries and you pick one or two or three and then you just do it. And it's like solid. So could you speak just a little bit about what'd you pick as the first few boundaries to draw? And how was that journey of getting solid in those boundaries?
Right. So I'd say the first boundary I set was actually with my biological father, because at that point he was still alive
Mm-hmm.
when I became a grief recovery method specialist. And I just realized that like being immersed in that relationship on a daily basis was very unhealthy for me,
Mm-hmm.
because he was choosing to continue drinking and
Yeah.
not making good choices for his life.
Mm-hmm.
And so I had to put up a boundary. And sadly, I mean, if you choose to be in the relationship, it's hard. If you choose to not be in the relationship, it's hard. I mean, both ways are
Mm-hmm.
painful, but I had to
Mm-hmm.
choose the one to step back so that I could take care of me.
Mm-hmm.
And so that looked like not spending much time together, not seeing each other except for like on special occasions and stuff,
Mm-hmm.
because being a part of that weekly, daily, how are you when I know you're drinking and you calling me when you're drunk like that, that just didn't work for me. It caused so much heartache in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So it was uncomfortable. Boundaries, yeah, when you start setting them, they are uncomfortable. And then you realize over time that
Mm-hmm.
it's helping you thrive by
Mm-hmm.
setting those.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so did you reach a point where you were like, this is just what it is? I'm drawing these boundaries because that's the life that I want to live. and I want to feel happy and I want to experience joy and just, yeah.
Yeah, I think I did. That doesn't mean that my heart didn't hurt at times because we always want or most of us want a really functional relationship with our parents.
Mm-hmm.
And so that was really hard for me. And I had hoped until he died that we would have a better relationship than we did. And there was a period of time where he stopped drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and it was amazing. Like
Mm-hmm.
we did have a good relationship, but he chose to go back to drinking,
Mm-hmm.
and there was nothing that I could do about it. It's kind of like you talk about, like when they have that one thing on their mind, whether it's a drug or whether it's alcohol, I mean, they'll do anything to get it. And
Mm-hmm.
it doesn't matter who we are. It doesn't matter that we're the daughter or the wife or whatever. They
Yeah.
are focused on that one thing that they need to feel good.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
I really saw that as I helped a friend who was addicted to narcotics. And
Mm-hmm.
no matter what I did, because I was trying to help them, and no matter what I did, it didn't make a difference. And in the end,
Mm-hmm.
they just pushed me out of the way because
Mm-hmm.
I was a hindrance, because I was
Right.
trying to help them get clean and
Mm-hmm.
they didn't want it.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And I think there's so many things that are embedded in that piece, along with your dad's story, your stepfather's story, relative to this being able to separate, kind of like you're dealing with the addict,
Mhm.
and then when they're not drinking, then you have pieces of that person back. You can see them, you can touch them, you can talk to them.
Right.
So it's holding space for witnessing somebody in suffering with
Hmm.
this disease and knowing full well that it's not ours to change.
Right.
And so learning how to love somebody with boundaries.
Hmm. Yeah, it's very difficult because you're right. Like my compassionate heart was like, well, these individuals have a disease and
Mm-hmm.
they're suffering. And I know that there was something that occurred in their life. They didn't just choose to start using and become addicted. Like
Mm-hmm.
this is their way of dealing with something that's painful, and maybe they don't even know what that is, but they're numbing themselves.
Mm-hmm.
And that mixed with this is not healthy for my life because I am so enmeshed in this that
Right.
it's destroying my life. Like it's taking over 90% of my thoughts, like the
Right.
worry, and I can't do anything about it. No matter what I try, like they're not going
Mm-hmm.
to stop just because I'm trying to interfere and be a
Mm-hmm.
referee. No, they're just going to
Mm-hmm.
push me out of the way. And I think I really learned that when I was trying to help a friend that was addicted to narcotics. I think that
Yeah.
was, it happened in my life for a reason. And I think it was
Mm-hmm.
for me to see back to my dad and my stepdad how there was nothing that I could have done that
Mm-hmm.
would have changed their path. It was,
Mm-hmm.
that was their journey.
Mm-hmm.
And
Mm-hmm.
instead, I needed to care for myself.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think that's probably one of the hardest things for people to get clear on that love somebody who's dealing with this disease, is that it is their journey. And when they're adults, we can only love them from afar
Right.
generally, and draw boundaries that support us living a healthy, vibrant life.
Hmm.
It's a really interesting journey on our side too. What I do want the audience to hear is a lot of people that do love someone end up actually, the disease takes them out also.
Right. And there's very few, like you talk about, very few resources
Mm-hmm.
for the loved ones
Mm-hmm.
that are trying to navigate this with the addict. And
Mm-hmm.
I feel like some of the resources at least weren't very helpful to me
Mm-hmm.
because they weren't about moving forward. It was about continuing to talk about what the addict is or isn't doing, which
Mm-hmm.
isn't super helpful in our healing.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah, because we can't affect their behavior.
No.
And so I think people that get stuck in that notion that if they do this, it'll change. If they do this, it'll change. If they do this, it'll change. And it's like, Uh, no,
Hmm. And I
that's not
think it
how it
takes a
works.
long time for most of us to realize that. I mean,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of pain,
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
because as firsthand, seeing someone we love in the middle of addiction is
Mm-hmm.
heartbreaking to us.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yes.
Watching them suffer and not being able to fix it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Yeah. And so I finally came to the conclusion that I didn't begin to know what certainly Sam's journey was.
Mhm.
I'm a big believer in our journey serve. I didn't know exactly sometimes what that would serve. I didn't know if he would live, but I wasn't going to let his journey and my journey go in vain.
Right. I think that's important. Yeah. I
Hmm.
mean, as I look back on my life, all the difficult things that have happened have become a gift for me
Yeah.
because they
Yeah.
got me to where I am today.
Hmm. Hmm.
And the work that I do helping people
Hmm.
navigate painful life events, because we all
Hmm.
have them. None of us
Hmm.
are free of grief. Happens
Hmm.
from the minute we're born until the minute we die. And
Hmm.
I think the more people that we can help navigate the pain in their heart, the healthier our world will be.
Hmm. I'm totally with you. And so, do you kind of subscribe to the belief that life is happening for us instead of life is happening to us?
I do. And that's, yeah, I didn't for many years, but
Hmm.
once I really started looking at all the events of my life and started healing the pain, I
Hmm.
realized that it was all a gift for me. But
Hmm.
for many years, I was the victim. I was stuck
Hmm.
in that. And so most of us get stuck there at some point.
Hmm.
And I think if we can, you know, move forward and do the healing, I think we can see that there is a purpose, even though
Hmm.
it's been a really painful
Hmm.
journey, there's
Hmm.
still a purpose for all of it.
Yeah. At this stage of the game, I've had so many things happen, and I've built that muscle of understanding that when I feel cracked wide open, that is the opportunity for me to rise.
Mhm.
That is the opportunity for me to learn another lesson, to learn another way of being. There's always gifts embedded in, actually, no matter what's happened, I can point back to the gifts that were there now that I might not have seen earlier in my life.
Oh yeah, definitely. I mean, when my husband and I divorced, like I said, I was really angry at first, and then I started doing my work and
Mm-hmm.
realized that how I showed up, and this is just talking about me, right? There's two people in a relationship, but how
Mm-hmm.
I showed up was not conducive to a healthy relationship. And once I
Mm-hmm.
was able to do my own healing, I was able
Mm-hmm.
to go back and realize that like he gave me a gift by leaving me, because had he not left me,
Mm-hmm.
I wouldn't be where I am today. I wouldn't have
Mm-hmm.
healed. I wouldn't have found out who I was. And so
Mm-hmm.
I was a big gift, and I was able to go back and tell him that, which for me, I mean, I get
Mm-hmm.
choked up talking about it now because I never thought that I would be able to do that.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And what a moment to be able to revisit with him
Yeah.
the gift that he actually gave you.
Hmm.
And so on the other side of this, Dawn, who are you now?
I am somebody who's so much more confident than I ever was.
Mm-hmm.
I'm somebody that like looks at the things in my life and realizes that they have a purpose.
Mm-hmm.
I step into those areas where I know I still need to grow. Um, and like I have healthy relationships again, which is really, really nice to be able to navigate those. I set
Mm-hmm.
boundaries, and I have a passion for helping others heal now,
Mm-hmm.
so that they can, like we've talked about, thrive versus survive, because I just found myself for many years surviving, and I didn't want to do that anymore. And I don't want other people to have to do that.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel inspired. I have lots of joy in my life.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. And do you find that the people that you're dealing with in your grief work, you're kind of my sense would be that you're opening windows or doors for them in viewing what they're going through different eyes.
Correct. And so many people come to me saying, well, I just got a divorce or I just lost my job and they're experiencing this grief. And when we start
Hmm.
working together, it usually goes back to something in childhood with their first relationships with mom and dad,
Hmm.
because those set us up for life.
Hmm.
And so we don't just end up looking at the one thing that's affecting them, the acute grieving
Hmm.
event. We look
Hmm.
at their whole life and things that have happened and how that might be affecting them. Because
Hmm.
if we don't look back, we're missing a huge part of the story.
The way that I think about it is it becomes recognizing the pattern that we created when we were kids growing up and whatever it was we were growing up in. And then, so knowing the pattern, because most people don't know. Um,
Correct.
and then it's like, okay, so what outcomes do you want in your life?
Mhm.
And then it's the work of repatterning, so to speak.
Yeah, it's really interesting when I work with my clients, seeing those patterns. Like it's the
Mm-hmm.
same thing over and over and over again, whether they were
Mm-hmm.
in a relationship and there was infidelity, or whether there was multiple divorces, or whatever it was, or marrying someone that was an alcoholic multiple times. Like you're 100% correct. We just keep repeating these things, and when we're in it, we don't
Mm-hmm.
see it until we
Mm-hmm.
can step back, and it's like, wow,
Mm-hmm.
why have I been doing this?
Mm-hmm.
And we do have to look back to our childhood and our beliefs about different things and how we
Mm-hmm.
navigate life and our relationships, because it usually is way back there.
Mm-hmm. 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 Yeah, there's some work that I do with positive intelligence.
Hmm.
Are you familiar with?
A little
Sure.
bit, yeah.
Okay. It really is very much geared in this space, but it also is very brain science oriented in terms of we create these patterns that don't serve us, that we don't feel good in, and so that we're residing down here. And
Right.
so, how do we actually do the awareness piece of understand what this is? Because we have a pattern for that. And then, how do we interrupt that pattern? And then, what's the pattern we want to create, which is up here in
Yeah.
terms of our brain science? And it's more than just an intellectual construct because we're actually rewiring our neural pathways. And so I work a lot in that space, particularly with execs that
Hmm.
want different outcomes.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I think we really do have to look at our thoughts and how they're creating our life, because many
Mm-hmm.
times it's
Mm-hmm.
creating exactly the opposite of what we want.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so let me ask you this. In your practice, what are some of the commonalities that you're seeing show up now?
As far as like what my clients are experiencing.
Yeah, because I mean, my take on we're in a very different time now, and so I think we have more heightened experiences with anxiety and depression
Mhm.
and suicide and all these things because people just don't know how to navigate,
Correct.
and so they just do whatever they're going to do.
Right. Well, one of the things I'm really seeing is people are afraid to talk. They're afraid to share what's on their heart because
Hmm.
they've been met with individuals or groups of people that aren't listening, don't want to just listen to listen. They
Mm-hmm.
want to either fix or compare what they're going through to what their friends going through.
Mm-hmm.
So they just stay silent and they
Mm-hmm.
isolate. And so a lot of
Oh, wow.
people I work with just say, I feel so alone. Like I haven't talked to anybody about this because I don't feel
Mm-hmm.
like there's someone that is a safe space for me.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of people are really struggling with so many things that are going on in the world and they just don't know how to navigate it. And
Mm-hmm.
I always remind people like we can have grief about things related to what's going on in the world. Like here's a great example. When Princess Diana died, there was so much grief in the world. And it
Right.
didn't matter if you didn't know her. We feel
Right.
like we know people because we
Mm-hmm.
watch them on TV, we read about them in a magazine or a newspaper, whatever. And so we have this relationship even though we haven't met them in person.
Mm-hmm.
And so we can grieve about all these things,
Mm-hmm.
different deaths in the world or disasters that have happened. And so I'm finding a lot of people really struggling with these things right now that are
Okay.
outside of their personal life, but
Yeah.
they're part of the world.
Yeah. And so I hear you. And I wonder if that's also a pattern of continuing to grieve.
You mean from like other things in their life? And yeah,
Yes.
yeah, it
Yeah.
is. Yeah, it always goes back to this is reminding me of.
Mm-hmm.
And so we look back at those things, from
Mm-hmm.
childhood or early adulthood, things that have happened in our lives, because
Mm-hmm.
we resonate with things because somehow they touch us deeply
Mm-hmm.
because
Mm-hmm.
of something else that has happened in our life.
Yeah. And so when you're dealing with somebody who has basically silenced themselves and then isolated up, what are kind of their first steps out of that to be able to feel safe to share? And I experience shame with that.
Mhm.
And so, yeah, I'm curious.
So I typically work one-on-one with my clients versus group work, and that's
Mm-hmm.
because I really like to build a deep relationship where they trust me to talk
Mm-hmm.
about whatever's on their mind and their heart, and I
Mm-hmm.
hold space. And
Mm-hmm.
so just being that person that will listen, and I don't criticize, I don't judge. I mean, I
Mm-hmm.
just hold space for someone.
Mm-hmm.
Um, really shifts things because people do feel like they can talk and
Mm-hmm.
share whatever is going on in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Before every session with my clients, I check in, well, how are things? How have things been in the last week since we met? So there's just like really a deep connection. And
Mm-hmm.
because some people don't feel like they have that anywhere else in their life. And so
Right.
that's really the first step is encouraging people to be emotionally honest and then being that what I call listening heart, where I
Mm-hmm.
listen without the need to give advice or try and fix something for them, but just to
Mm-hmm.
hold space.
Mm-hmm. And which is so mission critical uh, because lots of times it is their first experience.
Yeah.
And so then there's a journey to, okay, well, how do I learn to trust somebody
Mhm.
else outside of this relationship?
Yeah. And we talk about that. I talk about finding your tribe, finding those people that, do love you unconditionally,
Mm-hmm.
that will be that safe space for you to be able to talk to them and
Mm-hmm.
who don't judge you. And
Mm-hmm.
it's not always easy to find those
Mm-mm.
people at
Mm-hmm.
all. And sometimes they're people that we didn't even think would serve that purpose. It's kind
Mm-hmm.
of like when you go through any type of loss in your life, divorce, death, whatever,
Mm-hmm.
and people come, the people that you expected to be there for you are not there. And then
Mm-hmm.
the people that you would have never thought would show
Mm-hmm.
up and they're like, I'm here for you. I want to listen. And
Mm-hmm.
so sometimes we have to rethink our relationships, like I was talking about before, like
Mm-hmm.
boundaries. Who is healthy for me to have in my life right now?
Right, right. Yes. Could you ask that question again? Because I think it's a really powerful question to ask.
Yeah, who is healthy for me to have in my life right now?
Mm-hmm.
Because we all have lots of relationships. We have good friendships, we have acquaintances, but we usually have people in our life that we know drain us,
Mm-hmm.
that like
Mm-hmm.
take more than they give,
Mm-hmm.
that require so much energy
Mm-hmm.
and don't always show up to be of service, to hold space, to be loving. And so taking a look at those relationships, like especially when we're going through difficult times, we need people around us that
Mm-hmm.
can be a listening heart, that
Mm-hmm.
can be a safe space, and that love us on our messiest days.
Mm-hmm. Yes. And so those people I call vampires,
Yes.
they just suck the energy right out of you.
Yep, energy vampires. And most of us have a couple of them, and
Mm-hmm.
it's okay to keep them at a distance because
Mm-hmm.
that's what is healthiest for us at many times. Because
Mm-hmm.
we have to honor our needs first. And I remind people of that. Like there's a
Mm-hmm.
question that I love to ask people. When you, if I ask you to tell me all the things, people you love, do you include yourself on that list? And most people are like, I've never thought about that. And I'm like, but
Mm-hmm.
you have to love yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Because if you don't love yourself, no one else
Mm-hmm.
is going to be able to
Mm-hmm.
show up and love you.
Mm-hmm.
And if you don't put yourself first, you have nothing to give everyone else around you.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you know that really well as far as with your son. Like you had to put yourself first. You had to take care of you, or you couldn't be there when your son got healthy.
Mm-hmm. Exactly. Exactly. And I think a lot of people, no matter their circumstances, just really aren't like given permission.
Correct.
I hear so many people say, well, that's selfish. And I'm like,
Yes.
okay, are you open to like reframing that?
Hmm.
And so I think that's a really interesting part of this too.
Yeah, it is. And I talk to people all the time and they say the same thing to me, like it's selfish to take time for me. No, it's not selfish because
Hmm.
how good are you? How much worth are you to someone
Hmm.
else if you don't take care of you? If you
Hmm.
are so overwhelmed and so exhausted and just don't have the energy to
Hmm.
put out into the world, how good are you for your family or your children or your job, your community? Like,
Hmm.
if you need to call in sick and just take a mental health day, like do what
Hmm.
you need to do for yourself so you can put out more light into the world.
Hmm. Yes, exactly. And so, so I'm wondering about the notion that when a crisis shows up, like if you have a pattern and practice of self-care
Mm.
and something from a crisis perspective shows up, I think about it through the lens of, okay, I need to add something else to my self-care bucket or my formula or whatever that is. And there's degrees based on what is showing up in order to be able to be the person I want to be in the midst of the crisis.
Right. Yeah, I talk to people about that all the time because I mean, I'm not perfect either. When there's like a
Mm-hmm.
crisis going on, like that's the first thing that usually goes whew, out the door is my self-care. And then I like,
Right.
okay, why am I so tired? Rein it back in. What do I need to do
Mm-hmm.
for me?
Mm-hmm.
And I talk to people about, especially like moms that have young kids, even if what you need, the only thing you can do is lock yourself in the bathroom for 10 minutes, breathe, center
Mm-hmm.
yourself,
Mm-hmm.
whatever you can do. I mean, because you're right, in the middle of a crisis, we don't have a lot of time,
Mm-hmm.
but we can create small pockets of space. And
Mm-hmm.
sometimes just the breathing, sometimes a few minutes of meditation, going into a quiet room, whatever we can do, stepping out in
Mm-hmm.
nature. Those are important. And but we shouldn't beat ourselves up that we can't do an hour of something when
Mm-hmm.
we are in the midst of a really difficult time.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think it's mission critical for us to do those kinds of things. I recently had a client nephew committed suicide, and
Mm.
we've been working for a number of years now. And so what he spoke to was the self-care program that he had put in place that helped him be grounded and centered in the midst of all of this. As he's a CEO for a company, it's a family owned business. Everybody's affected by this situation. And so he was able to be who he is and go through the emotions of what was true for him while also being centered and grounded because of his self-care program.
Yeah, and I think the more consistent of a program we have, the easier it is to just
Mm-hmm.
continue that versus if we just one day think, okay, well, I'm going to meditate today and maybe in a couple days I'll take a walk. I think it's more difficult to continue that when something comes up.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I'm a big believer in create habits that stick.
Yeah, I agree.
And that's a consistency that you only build. It's like a muscle. You can't like work out for a day and expect to have muscles. And if you go 3 weeks having worked out, not worked out, your muscles start to atrophy again.
Yeah, that's true. And it's interesting because sometimes we have a hard time making a space in our schedule for those things, but yet like we feed ourselves every day, we take showers, we make our bed, all of these things, but why don't
Mm-hmm.
we create time for the self-care
Mm-hmm.
activities that are so important to our emotional and physical well-being?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. I think partly is we're just not trained
I
that this is
agree.
important. And then it takes a potential crisis to knock us on our butts. And if we do ask for help and get help and so on and so forth, then we begin to explore the notion that this self care is non negotiable.
Right. Yeah, that's really true. And I think the more time we focus on self-care, the more we realize how it does impact our life in positive ways.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I'm thinking about what you're seeing. So, from an anxiety perspective, obviously in the business world, we're in very uncharted territory,
Yeah.
unprecedented. We don't, a lot of people don't know which way is up. Some people have stopped planning because they're waiting for things to settle out. And I'm like, it's not going to settle out. So, you need to pick some scenarios to figure out for your business. So, from the anxious perspective, because I think we're swimming in a pool of anxiety.
Oh, I 100% agree with that. And that's one thing that, I mean, I have clients that after they work with me, they report, gosh, I have so much less anxiety. Like I felt anxious all the time
Mm-hmm.
because the thing is underneath that anxiety, there's years of things that have led to
Mm-hmm.
anxiety, right? And now we
Mm-hmm.
have all the things that are going on in maybe our personal life, our
Mm-hmm.
communities, the world.
Mm-hmm.
So that's adding to the anxiety. And so
Mm-hmm.
we have to take some of that stuff, we call it like in our backpack or in our teapot, right? That's about ready
Mm-hmm.
to explode. Like we
Mm-hmm.
have to unload some of that so that we
Mm-hmm.
can bring down that anxiety level.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And so I so appreciate that you saw that you didn't want to stay in just survival, that you wanted to actually thrive and feel happy and joy and all of those things. And so what do you do now that keeps you centered and solid?
Well, I continue to do my work. So with the grief recovery method, like I never ask somebody to do something I've never done.
Mm-hmm.
And I continue my work because, like we talked
Mm-hmm.
about, we
Mm-hmm.
experience grieving events and
Mm-hmm.
transitions change throughout our life. So when
Mm-hmm.
things come up, I do my work and that
Mm-hmm.
keeps me grounded and centered. I
Mm-hmm.
spend a lot of time reflecting on things that are coming up in my mind and my heart and in my life. Like, what is this here for me? Like,
Mm-hmm.
this is helping me grow, but in what way? How do
Mm-hmm.
I need to move forward?
Mm-hmm.
I spend time every single day, like out in the woods, walking with my Bernese mountain dog. She's like my best buddy.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
And I nurture those relationships that are healthy for me, that aren't
Mm-hmm.
energy vampires,
Mm-hmm.
the ones that provide the unconditional love. And then
Mm-hmm.
I distance myself from the ones that don't create joy, don't create a healthy place in my mind
Mm-hmm.
by being
Mm-hmm.
around them. So
Mm-hmm.
those are my big things that I do at this point in my life to stay healthy.
Yeah, great. Okay. Well, let's wrap this up. And so how can people get a hold of you if they want to get a hold of you? And I just want to put this out there. She's in Central Oregon. I'm on a little farther to the west of her. So we're Oregon people talking to Oregon people.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. And do you do Zoom also with your clients,
I
or is it
do. Yeah. In fact, right now all my clients are Zoom because I can work with people all over the world. So
right?
it's great.
Yes.
So my website is dawnmichellejackson.com and
Mm-hmm.
Michelle has one L in it.
Mm-hmm.
I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Facebook. So yeah, you can find me all those places. And I have a link on my website to do a discovery call with me, which is free.
Great.
I just like to chat with people and connect and see where they are in
Mm-hmm.
their life.
Yeah. Super. And the book that you wrote?
Yeah, I wrote a couple of them. Yeah, I wrote Journey to Peace and Healing, and that does have a lot about my grief journey. It has a lot of reflective questions for people to kind of look at their own life.
Mm-hmm.
and see where they're stuck and maybe where they want to move forward. My
Mm-hmm.
second book is Journey to Self-Discovery, and it's a daily reader. It's 100 days
Mm.
with affirmations for each page. And it's just to provide a little inspiration because I know when I've gone through some of
Mm-hmm.
my most difficult times, it was hard to read a whole chapter, but I could read a page that would help me
Right.
get through the day, provide me some helpful messages
Mm-hmm.
and
Yeah,
inspiration.
absolutely. Absolutely. So we will have all of that information in the show notes for people to find you and hopefully
Perfect.
reach out to you. I do thank you for the work that you're doing that is so vital in the certainly in the times that we're in. And so many people are experiencing grief and don't define it that way like you yourself experienced.
Right.
But we're grieving so much at this point
Mhm.
that we do need safe spaces to talk to people and begin our own journey or wherever we are in the journey, continue the journey of taking care of ourselves, but also kind of unpacking,
Definitely.
what's happening for us in this new age, so to speak.
Yeah, and I always remind people like your book isn't written. Like you have
Hmm.
chapters of your life, and maybe they've been really difficult and you've been surviving and struggling, but you can thrive. You have more
Hmm.
chapters in your book, so your book
Hmm.
isn't finished yet.
Hmm. I love that. I love that. I totally believe that. And we can be the agents of the life that we write, the chapters that we write in the future.
Yes, 100%.
Hmm. Well, thank you so much for joining me today.
Thank you for inviting me on. I'm so honored to be here and be able to talk to your audience.
Great. Okay, everybody, keep thriving. Until next time, take care.